Well, it's Sunday and we're back.
We are.
I mean, we've already been to the train show.
Right.
We're just taking you guys along. But we wanted to show you the rest of the train show as we go home here because it was just way too much to fit in.
It was time.
It's such a huge train show. There's just no way to cover the whole thing in 1 week. So we didn't.
No.
So check it out. Second half, the rest of the story. Well, last week, of course, we showed you how we got to the train show. A little recap here that we started out at the intermodal hub.
We always take the light rail when we ride into the train show.
That's right. It's always fun. And, of course, the light rail only gets you to the hub.
No.
So from here, we ride the front runner.
The big train.
The big train all the way to Ogden. The front runner is, of course, named for the Wasatch Front. They now call the other side of the mountain range the Wasatch Back. I don't know why it took them so long to figure that out.
I'm in favor of mass transit. It takes the pressure off from driving.
Well, you know, you can do things other than drive while you're riding the train. You can look at scenery.
Yes.
You can take pictures.
Right.
And you can just...
Text.
Text. And soon enough, we find ourselves in Ogden.
Right.
Now, this particular train show, it's been around for decades, but over that amount of time, it has grown into decidedly Utah's biggest, most popular train show. And the neatest thing is it attracts a ton of dealers.
No kidding. Look at all of this.
This is a really cool dealer, huge dealer, Spring Creek model trains. We first ran into them at the Cheyenne Train Show Depot Days in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we posted video of these neat machine shops that they have in HO scale and possibly also O scale, not sure. And people kept saying, well, where do I get that stuff? That's just really cool. And I had to come back and say, I haven't a clue. I've never seen that stuff before. So here it is, and if you look closely, there are addresses and phone numbers, and it's Spring Creek models, so you shouldn't have any trouble finding this stuff if in fact you're looking for it. The stuff itself is amazingly cool.
I love how small and it works.
It works.
Yes.
We've seen full-size variants of these in many, many roundhouses and machine shops, but these are really well reproduced and just flat fun.
They are.
And just a ton of depth of inventory. People brought stuff. You know, when you visit the local hobby shops, it's kind of the same stuff, and it's always local roads, generally speaking, and so on. But it's really neat when you run into these big national dealers because you have no idea what railroads and what fun stuff you might run into.
Look what I found, a California Zephyr.
That is so very, very cool. Years ago, I wanted to put together a really nice California Zephyr, but couldn't find models that really worked for me. These are just beautiful.
Oh, I'll say.
They're a little expensive.
Yep.
But that's the nature of things. Quality costs money.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you get to catch up with a lot of people that you might not have seen for quite a while, and, well, that's fun too.
Yes, it's always fun to talk to everybody.
Now, this was fascinating. There was a ton of Hiawatha stuff here. Everywhere you looked, they had Hiawatha. So I asked the guy about it, and he said that he just bought out an entire estate from a collector who'd been totally into Milwaukee Road in Hiawatha. So he bought up all of these models, and he said this is only half. He's already sold half of it. Well, in spite of the fact that half of the collection's already sold, this is just an amazing amount of Hiawatha. Now here we have the Hobby Stop in Orem, and they do almost exclusively N-scale, not really, but the predominant N-scale. You love N-scale.
I sure do.
Here we might want to just start by buying a really cool train and then see where that leads.
Yes. Oh, look, here's the rug dealer.
Yeah, and we could get another one.
Let's see if we can.
The one sure looks nice.
It does.
The show is so darn big, it's in a whole bunch of different rooms.
It sure is, and I can't help but stop and look at everything. Well played with.
Toys.
Yeah, look at this.
Show me your caboose.
My caboose.
Well, yeah.
I have my coat on or I wouldn't. I'd like to get one of these someday.
We ought to. A tin plate's one of those things you can just kind of have on a shelf.
They just remind me of the toys I grew up with.
Absolutely. That's what makes them so fun.
I have a hard time in here.
Yeah.
But it's just, this one's 40 something. Anyway, $40. Oh, but which one to choose?
Boy, that is a tough one. This guy caught my eye because it's number 1 gauge.
Oh, how neat.
It's bigger than the usual O scale. I think it was a Marks, but it didn't have a name on it. I was tempted to grab it, didn't. Oh, and look, Super Track.
Oh, no kidding.
Now, in the basement of Sears, they'd built a huge Lionel layout, and it was all in Super Track. And I thought, well, why would anybody use anything else until I saw the cost? It's expensive. And, of course, when we were kids, this stuff was considered junk, Plasticsville. And now I just love it because it is so basic.
I love the box.
I love the boxes. This stuff is just flat fun. Toy trains are fun.
Just toys, yes. Yes, that's us.
That's us.
Now, the old train platforms at the depot have been converted into interior spaces, and of course, this is all full of dealers, too. And out here, they had real railroad artifacts, lanterns and china.
Oh, look at how beautiful.
You know, we've been tempted to get into China.
Yes, we might have to renew our passport.
Oh, yeah. Not getting into China in that respect. And more toys out here. God, toys everywhere you look. And this is the main waiting room. More dealers in there. Just every room full of dealers. But brass.
This caught my eye.
Oh my gosh, this lady's brass was just, seriously. I like her attitude about DCC.
That's right.
Since we don't usually run our brass, I guess not having DCC in there is fine because it just sits on a shelf anyway. More Hiawatha.
Isn't that crazy?
What's with the Hiawatha? I mean, I approve. I love Hiawatha, but even more Hiawatha stuff. But just an amazing collection of brass she had for sale here. And check this out, a New York Central Hudson.
Yes.
We just did the show on the River Rossi Hudsons, and here's one in brass for, about 5 times the money. But how beautiful
Just
of a
wonderful.
locomotive. And logging.
Yes.
Logging stuff. That's just really cool. And O-scale.
Yes.
Now, some of this, probably most of this, I guess, is ON3, but there's also some standard gauge, a standard gauge cab forward in O-scale.
No, look at that.
And a Zephyr back there. Holy cow. But what really caught my eye was the narrow gauge
There
stuff.
it is.
Don almost bought this K27. I don't know why he didn't, because he was really digging out his money. And this ditcher.
I fell in love with that.
Oh, it's a, classic Rio Grande ditcher. It really is a little bit busted up and it needed some work, but that just makes it an orphan and even more desirable as far as I'm concerned because it's all motorized, and that's the part that's gotten all screwed up. But all this functionality works, or should I say worked, when it was new, and this needs to be repaired. But it's got motors inside it, and oddly enough, it's even self-propelled.
Wow.
I'm not sure because the original one wasn't self-propelled, as far as I know, so that's a little odd.
This is just like eBay, only in real life.
That's right, you get to see what you're buying before you bid on it.
It's Christmas again. Look who we have.
Oh no, Santa Claus! I thought he'd left town.
Never.
Hi, Santa.
There he is.
Tell you what, why don't you take your snow and go back to the North Pole for
Yes.
about 8 more months? Just saying.
And this is just a little weird.
Yeah, where did this come from?
Well, there's an art gallery up here, and you have to cut through the art gallery to get to the Garden Railroad and stuff. I hope they didn't drag their modules through here. Just a little diff.
I could say something, but I won't.
And as we mentioned last week, this is also the home to the Utah Railroad Museum, and they've got all these really neat displays inside the museum. Predominantly, it's about the driving of the Golden Spike.
Neat.
That's the kind of local legend and the local railroad history. Here we have yet another example of the actual Golden Spike.
That thing gets around.
Boy, I guess. Everybody claims to have the real one. Ooh, look. The 10 miles of track laid in one day sign.
Yes, and it's pointing the other way.
It's pointing the other. We just did a whole show on that.
Yes.
And we did a whole bunch of investigation, and I looked for earlier pictures. That is an earlier picture of this sign. And as you say, this is looking to the west. Mm-hmm. This is the earliest picture and the only one I've ever seen facing west. And some other sort of generic stuff. Here we have a dining car.
Nice.
And conductor's uniform and porter uniforms and that sort of stuff. I love the look of all this stuff. And more China again.
Oh, my.
Wow, just neat stuff. There's the M10,000. We did a show on the M10,000 by Union Pacific. And look at this, Gil Bennett.
He is quite the artist.
Boy, I tell you, and they have a whole gallery of Gil Bennett original. And they've got a really cool CTC control board here. You know, Lee Nicholas, remember we did that show on him? He runs this whole model railroad with one of these.
And these guys want to also.
They do have a really good model railroad here. It's not controlled by the CTC board, but it just kind of runs continuously. And what a beautiful HO model railroad they've got in here. Again, it's a display depicting the Transcontinental Railroad, different locations along that, up to and including driving the Golden Spike at Promontory. This section right here is Donner Summit. And here we have the actual Promontory Mountains near where they drove the Golden Spike.
I think the detail is really neat. Look at this.
I love that. A little building under construction, and the figures are so well done. Oh, here's Weber Canyon.
Oh, cool.
That's not too far from Promontory Summit, just above Ogden here. And here we have the causeway that replaced the Promontory Summit line. The Southern Pacific ran their tracks right through the middle of the Great Salt Lake. They called this going to sea by rail. And they've got one of the pilings here at the museum. On Friday, we're going to do an entire show on this causeway as a look what we found while we were screwing around, because this is actually a subject in its own right.
What is with the spider?
I think there's an entire story there. Oh, and here we have the aforementioned Corinne, where Lee Nicholas has his model railroad. This is what it looked like in 1869. A little more wild West camp back then.
But I love it.
And here we have the Wasatch Scalers.
Oh, nice.
Our friends Bob and Karen.
Yes.
And the rest of the group. We have been invited to bring a train to the NMRA National when they set this up, and they said we can run on their railroad if we want.
Oh, nice.
So that's quite the invitation. We may have to just get ourselves an initial N-scale, since you love N-scale, and try running it on their railroad, and just for fun.
Yes.
Just for screwing around purposes.
That's right.
It seems like these guys show up with their railroad to all the different shows. They were at Thanksgiving Point, they were at the NMRA, and they're planning to be at the upcoming NMRA National Convention in Salt Lake City.
This railroad seems to run very well.
It runs great. Well, they're into realistic operation, and it's all laid out with sidings and meats and everything, so, well, it has to run great. It's really a drag when your coal drag is actually dragging.
Oh, gee.
Tearing up the cinders as it goes. But that almost never happens with this railroad. It's just really first-class operations.
That's improperly placed.
And over here we have the Garden Railroad Society with their large-scale stuff. These guys prefer 1/29th scale, but there's a lot of different scales you can run on this number 1 gauge track. They prefer running outdoors because they're the Garden Railroad Society.
Yes, a little bit big.
A little bit big, but they can't very well travel around with a portable garden, so instead they have a portable railroad that they can use to just show off their really neat 1/29th scale equipment. It's really impressive because it's really big.
Yes.
This is, of course, really close to our scale of choice, 120.3, which runs on the same gauge track, number 1 gauge, and we want to build a garden railroad.
Oh, absolutely.
At Garage Mahal. Now over here we have the toy train operators. This is O-scale running on 3-rail, you know, Lionel stuff, although this isn't actually Lionel equipment they're running right here. But the same idea, at least. Toy trains.
That's fun.
It's really fun. So many people doing 3-rail right now. And, of course, there's the old original American Flyer group over here as well. Now, there's a character here in the cap, Bruce. And I've known Bruce for over 50 years. And he's always been running American Flyer for as long as I've known him. Even as a kid, he ran American Flyer, and, well, he just still does.
Oh, look, I recognize all this over here.
That's the McGurty Machine Shop off of Steve's Railroad.
It is. It's been repurposed and has a new home.
It's over here on the 3-rail layout. These are the guys that bought these buildings at the yard sale that we covered on the channel. Here's some more of Steve's buildings over here. And I guess they're planning to integrate these into the 3-rail railroad. So, well, that's pretty cool.
That is.
Steve has always scratch built the most amazing structures. Look at that stuff. And here we have the Spike150.org guys counting down to the arrival of the big boy.
Along with the rest of us.
Yes.
Oh, this was a lot of fun.
Oh, and so tiring.
It is, and the vista going home is equally as beautiful.
Oh, the train ride home is some of the best part because you're just exhausted and you've got your new toys that you've bought, and it's just a pleasant ride home on the front runner.
Yes.
That was a great train show, and I'm exhausted. And you bought a neat little train set?
I did. I didn't have to worry about how I was going to get on the train to get it home.
We were going to pick up that other caboose, the 10-plate caboose,
Wow,
and we, you know, it's so big, it's like we just never found our way back to pick it up. And you don't want to haul a thing like that around all day.
No.
And darn it.
Oh, well, we'll
Darn
get
it.
another chance.
We may run into it. There's a lot more train shows coming up.
That's right. They'll be there.
They'll be there, and we'll be there, so it's all going to be wonderful.
Yes.
Well, if you're not a subscriber and you haven't been over to the channel, pop over to the channel, binge watch the 400 movies that are there.
Wow, 400.
400. And while you're at it, subscribe with the famous blue button, which is popping in just now. Zoink! There it is right there. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here on Tuesday with the Collector's Addict. We'll see you then.
See ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.